The last time tonight's guests were on EWTN Live with Father Mitch, they were leading us down a crash course in Catholicism. Father Mitch is unable to be here tonight, so I'm in the driver's seat this time, hoping to keep tonight's discussion between the lines. So buckle up and stay with us. Our guests tonight are familiar faces on EWTN with their Crash Course TV series on Catholic topics. And they're here this week shooting a new Crash Course series on the saints. So please welcome Father John Trigilio and Father Ken Brighenti.
Thank you, Father. Nice intro there.
Good to have you back. You're good friends of the Friars and of EWTN. Of course, you've been here for so many years and doing different series. I know many of our viewers are interested. What about Father Levis? You did so many series with him, The Web of Faith, and they'd like to know what's going on with Father Levis.
Well, Father Levis is still alive and around. Unfortunately, he had a little mishap last year around this time. He fell and hit his head and got a minor concussion. So he's been recuperating at a nursing home, St. Mary's Nursing Home in Erie. He needs a walker to get around, but he's still sharp as a tack, and he watches EWTN every chance he gets and corrects me on my mistakes as they come along. And he does appreciate everybody's prayers.
He just turned 89.
89 this summer.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, you did a book on For Dummies, Saints for Dummies, and that's the basis for the series that you just produced this past week. I saw a picture where you were handing one of your For Dummies books to Pope Benedict XVI. Can you tell us how that happened and what took place?
Yes, it was a book, Pope John Paul II for Dummies, and we wrote it. We wrote Catholicism for Dummies first, and then Women in the Bible for Dummies. So this was our third book, and so it was actually Father John Trigilio's bishop at the time, Bishop Rhodes, was able to get us good tickets at the audience. We were right in front. And so the Pope spent about 5 to 6 minutes with us. And when he saw the cover of the Pope John Paul for II Dummy, he says, I recognize this book, because we had given his secretary years before a copy of the Catholicism for Dummies, and he remembered it all these years later. So we were kind of impressed with that.
I bet you were.
And he also called us two young American priests.
Yes.
Wow.
So I consider that a papal infallible statement right there. So.
Well, For Dummies, that's a series that covers everything. I looked on the website today, everything from how to raise chickens to how to use the Twitter.
Right.
And so how did you get involved with the For Dummies series and you've done 4 books and you have a 5th one that is in the process now?
Right.
Yes, that's correct, with that particular publisher. It started, I thought, as a joke because I get this email from this lady who's a book agent saying, we're looking, or she said, I know that they're looking for an author to do Catholicism for Dummies because their competitor had done a similar version, and now they want to do one. And I thought it was a classmate of mine, the priesthood, so I'm thinking, oh, you're silly, and I disregard, and then she'd write back. And evidently she was in Mexico or someplace on vacation and saw EWTN. She wasn't of the Catholic faith, but she saw me in my cassock giving a talk and wrote down the name and the EWTN, and through the network then got a hold of me. And the irony was, just a few months before this, Father Ken and I were talking about the whole idea of using this format. We thought the person who had done the other book missed the opportunity because they weren't as authentic to the catechism and didn't have an imprimatur. So we thought if it was up to us, this is how we would do it. You know how you pretend you would do something differently if you were in the driver's seat. So I thought someone must have overheard me talking one day, and they're pulling my chain, as they say. But as it turned out, it was surreal. So then I called him up and I said, how would you like to work on a book, Catholicism for Dummies? So then he thought I was teasing him.
That's right.
So then the whole thing started over again. Then we found out it was for real, and it took us about 6 months to write the first manuscript, another 3 months to edit it, and then it was out.
And basically, we follow the catechism in the 4 pillars. So the Catholicism for Dummies follows that format, but it also is put in their format. That's why it's called the Dummy Book Series. They have a special format with little factoids and little arrows and groups of tens and things like that. Not that it's dummied down, but that's their particular format that they use.
We get a lot of email about the title because some people who never seen the series say, oh, that's horrible. One lady wrote to me, she said, does the Pope know about this? And I said, we gave him a copy. And she said, what does he know?
Yeah.
But I always tell her, I said, there's a quote from St. Paul, 1 Corinthians chapter 4, where he says, we're fools for Christ. And the Greek word that he uses, moroi, actually translates, we're morons for Christ. So it's a tongue-in-cheek euphemism that he's using, that they use to say you don't have to be an expert to appreciate the topic, not that it's insulting the what it's covering or the reader.
It's trying to present it in a simple format where you can grasp the material more easily.
Yeah.
And what we like about it is it's in Barnes & Nobles or Borders or many different types of bookstores that a person that goes into it maybe will not be looking for a copy of a religious book, but will happen to see this cover, know the series, and take it. And then we've gotten a lot of great emails on how this has changed their families. They got their marriages blessed, and one couple wrote to you about that, and some became Catholic because of it. So it's a great evangelization tool.
That's great.
And it's in the Spanish also, and Archbishop Gomez, the future Archbishop of Los Angeles, gave us an imprimatur in the Spanish edition.
Wonderful. Now, you wrote this book, Saints for Dummies. What is a saint? I guess that's the first question we have to ask.
I think it's chapter
what is a
1.
saint?
Well, basically, a saint is someone in heaven, and to get to heaven, you must live a saintly life or holy life. But I think what Pope John Paul the Great shows us by all the saints that he canonized is that holiness is for everyone, so that too many times people think that it's just a few select people who get to heaven. It's the few elect that are there, and the rest of us hope and dream of maybe getting there. But the Vatican Council talked about the universal call to holiness. St. Jose Maria Escrivá talked about it constantly too, and St. Francis de Sales. Mother Angelica said it how many times on this network? We're all called to be great saints. Don't miss the opportunity.
Don't miss the opportunity. That's right. So even the viewers who are watching us, those who work in factories, those who are housewives, those who are high school students, all of them can be saints?
All of them are called, and basically a saint is a person that is an ordinary person like you and me that do ordinary things like you and me, but they go and do it in an extraordinary way. They go the extra mile for the Lord. And sometimes it's heroic, but sometimes it's a life of obscurity, but it's faithfulness, perseverance in trial, tribulation, and their deeper union that they have with the Lord Jesus. And so they're really living out their baptismal call to be with God for all eternity. So hopefully that's where we're all going to be ending up at the end of our lives.
I remember Mother Assumpta, we had our recent family event in Canton, Ohio, and Mother Assumpta Long was there, and she gave a talk. And in her talk she said, I believe that there are thousands of saints walking on the earth today. Well, if you think about 6 billion people, we hope that that's true. But that gave me courage just to hear that, because it's like, yes, it is possible, and people are striving to live in accord with God's will today, and that we meet saints, people who are trying to be faithful to their state of life.
I think it's so important that we realize that it is possible, it's available, it's something that's attainable, that we should all desire. On the flip side, I think we have to be careful not to go the opposite direction and just presume everybody's going to get there, because Jesus does say it is a struggle. There is a spiritual battle. You do have to fight temptation and fight the devil, but it's not something that's only reserved for the few. It's that everybody can do this if everybody cooperates with God's grace.
I love a quote you have of Mother Teresa in the book, that she says the difference between a saint and one who does not become a saint is that the saint doesn't quit, doesn't give up.
Right.
So it's that persevering for that goal, that we all make mistakes, we all are sinners, we all struggle, But the saints are those who never give up. They keep going toward that goal.
Right.
I think it was, I don't know if it was Mother Teresa or some other saint that made a comment that Judas could have become a saint. He gave up. He quit, whereas Peter denied him 3 times. He was in the same boat that Judas was, except for different circumstances. But Peter converted and repented, right?
Right. He sought forgiveness.
Could you explain to our viewers the whole canonization process, how someone is proclaimed a saint by the Church and how that process takes place?
Well, Pope John Paul II really streamlined this process. It was a little bit more laborious before, but it begins on the local level where the proposed saint lived. Sometimes it's brought to the bishop, and it's opened at that level. They're called servants of God if there is enough evidence that for the holiness of this person. And then a more formal title would be venerable. That would be the next level. Then the congregation of saints would also be involved in Rome, especially when it comes to evaluating a miracle that God will perform through the intercession of this saint. The miracle has to be observed to make sure that it's an instantaneous, that there is no really medical reason why the cure took place, and it took place very suddenly. And so this is looked into before it's declared a miracle. So doctors are involved in science. Then any person that was alive that was in contact with this proposed saint would be interviewed. And if they did any writings, their writings would be looked at, very particular. If there's letters or correspondences, like in the case of John Newman, there was a lot of letters. He wrote to everyone that wrote to him. So they had to look at every one of the letters. Padre Pio, we went to visit his shrine in Pietrelcina, and there's a room of all the letters that were written, and he corresponded back. So this is all observed. And then finally, the last stage is an infallible stage, which is the canonization. So another miracle that God will alleviate and cure someone through the intercession of the saint. And upon that, with the final recommendations from the congregation of saints, the Pope then solemnly declares this person to be a saint now and forever.
So there has to be virtue evident in their lives, and then after their death, there's some indication from heaven,
right,
that through this person's intercession, that they are with God. And I remember the story of Chiara Badano. I don't know if you heard about this teenage girl who was beatified this past October. And the miracle that was associated with her was a boy who was dying of meningitis. And his organs had begun to shut down. The doctor said there was nothing further that could be done. And so it was an Italian family, and they knew about Chiara's sanctity. And so they visited her tomb and prayed to her, and he was miraculously healed. And so that was the miracle that was approved toward her beatification. And so she will need another miracle toward the canonization.
Yeah, and again, my cousin worked for a congregation of saints for the Salesian order, and he explained that there could be a room filled with volumes of work that they would have collected on the material. So it's really beyond a reasonable doubt when the Pope solemnly declares the person a saint, and it's very detailed in what they do with it. And
that's why it takes a long time, too.
Yeah.
It used to be 50 years after the death. They wanted to make a buffer so it wouldn't be a sentimental thing like when Mother Teresa died. You know, people wanted it right away, which was an obvious response. But the other thing is that if you just have a knee-jerk reaction and say, well, everybody liked her or it was emotional, where they want to make sure that this is a thorough investigation, that it's founded on credible evidence. And he did reduce the amount of time, so it's no longer 50 years. They have at least 5 years before they can start the process. But before, it was to make sure that there was no undue influence from relatives or somebody who could, maybe make some money off the thing.
Why is it important for us to remember the saints? Why is that important part of what we celebrate throughout the liturgical year? We celebrate these saints. Why is that important for us?
Well, I think if you look in just the secular world, you look at kids look for heroes, people to look up to. Well, in our Catholic faith, we look to the same. We look to the saints as like our heroes. They take an aspect of Christ's life from the gospel and live it to a perfection. So they're like a great example on how to live this aspect of the gospel. If they had written anything, their works can be very inspiring to us. And then finally, they're as friends of God, they intercede for us and they continue to pray for us. Like we have a prayer chain here on earth, one another, we call each other and ask for prayers. Well, these special friends of God in heaven continue that prayer chain in heaven.
Have you ever been helped by the saints?
Many times.
Where
St. Anthony helped me find everything, my keys, my fountain pen, parking spaces.
When I was a seminarian, someone gave me a beautiful relic a first-class relic of St. Thomas Aquinas. And so I always took the relic of St. Thomas Aquinas when I went into an exam, oral or a written exam, and asked the Lord's grace through his intercession, since he's the angelic doctor and wrote the Summa, and so he always helped me when it came to that.
We can think of Mother Angelica, too. When she was a teenager, she makes this novena to St. Therese.
Yeah.
Right.
And she's miraculously healed. And there's an interesting thing in the St. Therese's writings where she had this desire, Therese did, to plant the cross on every continent and to preach to all the continents simultaneously.
Right.
And someone wrote an article, very interesting, of how that connection with Mother Angelica and St. Therese as well. And then St. Clare, we could talk about, we have patron saints. So
that's an interesting one.
Yeah, the very patroness of this network. You know, people think, how can a woman who lived in the 13th century be the patron saint for television? And we found out why in our research. I guess in her cell one day she had a vision on the wall of something going on. It was like what you would see on television, but she had no TV. This wasn't her new LCD that the sisters got her for her birthday present.
Right.
But she saw an image, a live-action image on her wall of, I think it was our Blessed Lord.
It was the Mass.
It was the Mass, okay.
It was the Mass.
And so that, when people are connecting the dots, sometimes the patrons make sense, you know, because like St. Blaise cured some kid who was choking on a bone, so he's the patron saint for ailments of the throat, or St. Lucy had her eyes gouged out, so she's the patron saint for eyes. Some of them are more esoteric. There's a story in there under the story that is a little obscure, but you needed a patron for that thing anyway.
Like, it's an interesting one about St. Nicholas. He's patron saint of pawnbrokers.
Yeah.
I didn't know they needed a patron saint, but
they got a hard life to live.
And I love that connection with Mother Angelica and St. Clare, the patroness of television, because where St. Clare has this vision, or she sees the Mass on the wall where she is, it's like that's what Mother Angelica has accomplished through the network.
Right. Sending the Mass out
for the
everywhere,
shut-ins,
yeah.
because Clare was too sick to attend the Mass, and so that's a fulfillment really of St. Clare and what happened in her
And
own
isn't
life.
there something about Clare County?
That's right.
In Alabama?
That's where our shortwave radio
Okay.
facility is, and they didn't discover that until when they were buying the property, and it's just a tiny corner of St. Clair. So she's watching over the radio network in a way as well. Now, some have an objection that devotion to the saints is somehow in competition with our Lord. And why shouldn't we just go directly to Jesus in our prayers? Why should we have any devotion or attention to the saints at all?
We get a lot of that from, it's an honest question, and Father Levis and I would get that on the internet and on Catholic radio, and we tell people it's not that you have to go to the saints. It's not that Jesus says you must do it this way, but he allows it, and it's sort of not by necessity but by divine choice. Just like in the gospel, it's his mother who says they run out of wine. Now, he could have said, Ma, I know everything. I don't need you to tell me that. But what happens is he performs the miracle at her request.
Every Catholic knows that Jesus is the one mediator.
Yeah, from
we
St.
know
Paul.
that, right? So that's not a question. But as the Lord sent the apostles to go out He commissioned them to go out and to cure and heal and preach. He entrusted that mission to them. So He entrusts prayers and intercessions to the saints as well. Not that you have to go to them, but He entrusts them, and we can go to them. So it never takes away the one mediator.
So the Lord was never afraid to associate others, like
Exactly.
you
In
said,
His work.
to give them the power and authority to assist in His mission.
I think one of the most fascinating scenes in the gospel is when the Roman centurion, a Roman, a Gentile, sends his servant to Jesus and says, my little servant boy is ill. So here you got the Roman sending his servant boy to ask Jesus to cure this kid. It's not the Roman himself. It's not this messenger. So there's two intercessors going to Jesus, and our Lord doesn't say, hey, if the kid wants help, have him come to me directly. He allows the intercession because they're going to the one mediator.
I like that analogy you made about the football game or the
Oh,
crowd
yeah.
in the football
Oh,
game.
yeah, that's a good one.
Because
Yeah.
when you think of the people who say, well, don't the saints kind of like muddle the water? And I said, imagine you're playing a football or a soccer game, and in the stadium are all these ex-football players and basketball players, whatever, and they're cheering for you, they're rooting for you, and they're more enthusiastic than anybody else because they played the game, they've won the trophy, and they're rooting for you. And they're cheering for you. And that's what the saints do for us. They root and cheer for us because we're still alive on earth fighting the battle against the devil, against sin and evil. They've already won. They're in heaven. So they're cheering for us.
And I think it's helpful to that old terminology of church triumphant and church militant, and that we're all connected, and including church suffering, the souls in purgatory waiting to enter into heaven. So definitely the saints help us, and we help the souls in purgatory by our prayers, and so it's one continuous family. And I think that's important to know, that the saints, the communion of saints, is a family, and they want us to join their family in heaven, to be that experience their joy and happiness with the Lord. They want that for everyone else as well.
That no man is really an island, that there's an interdependence, a solidarity
Community.
with all of mankind.
Exactly.
Right.
And one of the great joys of heaven will be the communion of the saints, and that there won't be any of the things that diminish our relationships that we have here on earth, but we'll have this perfect communion with God and with the saints, with one another.
Yeah, no isolation.
Right?
Yeah. So.
That's the definition of hell, really,
Hell,
isn't it?
exactly.
It's
Utter,
isolation.
total isolation,
Yeah.
loneliness. You're all by yourself, and it's totally miserable.
Rather than the charity, that's the hallmark of heaven. Now, one of the things I liked about your books was you have a list, or your book, a list of all of the popes who were saints in history. And there's a long list of popes. I
Yes.
didn't realize so many popes are saints.
Yeah, about a third of all the popes, of 266 popes, are saints. Some are also beatified; they're on their way, like Blessed Pius IX and Blessed Pope John the 23rd. But about a third have been, and of course the early popes, a lot of them met their death because they were under Roman persecution. So they're not on the throne of St. Peter that long. It could be like maybe 4 or 5 months, and then they're martyred.
Even shorter.
Yeah, and even the famous catacombs in Rome, Callistus, is named after a pope who established the cemetery, and he himself martyred. And so you have a great list, and maybe just a few in our history that were, as Father John likes to call them, rascals. But they never erred in matters of faith and morals.
Right.
But there's a distinction. There is the gift of infallibility that the Holy Spirit has given the papacy in matters of faith and morals. But impeccability, the Pope goes to confession like you and me have to go to confession. And Pope John Paul II really made that a established part of his spiritual life, that people knew that he went almost daily to confession. That's what they struggle and strive as we do. But the third of the list is a great number. I mean,
Wow.
no other monarchy or ruling family can claim that many have made it into heaven.
When you think of it, I think the bad popes help in the sense that if they were all good or if they're all saints, people say, you're stacking that deck because you're taking care of your own.
Right.
But we admit there were some bad popes. like you had one bad apostle, of the 12, that shows you that all of them had a struggle, but the fact that you had saintly popes in addition to bad popes, that each one had to make a choice. Like you and I have to make a choice. Do I want to be a saint or do I not? And there's no neutrality involved.
I think you made a great analogy, Father Joseph, earlier when you said 1 out of 12 apostles was a bad egg, so that was Judas. So, and then the popes that were bad was much less in number than in that scenario.
The percentage is much less.
Exactly.
10 to 12 at the most. Bad popes out of 265 versus the 1 out of 12. So it's quite a comparison. And apostolic succession happens even when there's a bad pope, right?
Exactly.
So it's an unbroken line,
right,
that continues even to our own day.
From the apostles and Peter all the way up to our present generation. So, each can trace their roots, and that, of course, that's what we profess in the Creed, the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So apostolic succession from there.
Now you're taking a pilgrimage to visit some saints' sites in Italy this coming
May. Yeah,
okay.
May 17th, we're going to be going to Adriatic Italy. So that's the east coast of Italy, and we're going to go visit some the shrines that we cover in our book as well. One is St. Anthony of Padua, which is a Franciscan and a great person for finding lost articles. But he was also a doctor of the church, a golden tongue, which meant he was a great orator and preacher, so very instrumental in catechizing and preaching. Then we're also going to be visiting the beautiful Marian shrine of Our Lady of Loreto, which we have the beautiful litany of Loreto, and the Holy House of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph is preserved there, and encrusted in the basilica is a little section near the high altar, which you can go in and see the Holy House and pray. We're also going to visit Padre Pio, of course, in Pietrelcina, and then not too far where he used to go on pilgrimage is to St. Michael's Cave, where St. Michael appeared in the 6th century, and we'll have Mass as well in these various shrines. And St. Nicholas of Tolentine, which is famous this time of year, Santa Claus.
That's right.
Okay, he was really a bishop, really from Turkey, but his relics were brought over and placed in Bari. So the Italians like to say that St. Nicholas was Barese. And then we're going to go to another Franciscan shrine, St. Joseph of Cupertino, who was patron saint of aviators before planes were invented, because he would be in such spiritual ecstasy at Mass that he would levitate to the top of the chapel.
Wow.
So because he levitated, he got this title as patron of aviators. So we're going to be visiting all these wonderful religious places, and some of them, except for maybe St. Anthony or Padre Pio, are probably not very visited by Americans. So it's a great opportunity to go see that.
So you still have some seats available on that pilgrimage,
yes.
And people can. We have the contact information, so if people want to contact the pilgrimage, they can join you for that pilgrim. Why is it important for people to go on pilgrimage? What is the advantage of going to visit holy sites and places of the saints?
Well, first of all, pilgrimage sort of mirrors our life. It's a pilgrimage towards something. It's not just wandering. We're hopefully in life going towards heaven. So a pilgrimage, we have a destination, and the destination would be the site of a certain shrine of the saint. And hopefully when we're going there, we're either bringing prayers and petitions for ourselves or for someone that's dear or close to us, and we're asking, as you mentioned earlier, they went to the tomb of the beatified for a specific request, but also for to enkindle our devotion and our spiritual life, a reawakening, and to be inspired by these saints or and our Blessed Mother shrine in our lives to reawaken or to strengthen or to give extra life to our Holy Catholic faith. And we go with other pilgrims, so we feel that community together. We're praying together, and we're walking in our faith together. So you feel the strength of one another as well.
It's a very ancient Christian practice, isn't it, to go on pilgrimage?
Well, you see today, like in other faiths, like the Muslims make a pilgrimage to Mecca, the Jews make pilgrimages to Jerusalem and to the holy cities like Bethlehem. Christians have this wonderful tradition of making pilgrimages to the shrines, particularly of Jesus, but also of the saints. And like Father Ken said, it's the journey itself. The pilgrimage isn't a joy ride. Sometimes there are little obstacles, you
Right.
get fouled up at the airport, somebody lost their luggage. When you're on pilgrimage, you offer that up because the journey itself is meant to be a little bit arduous because it reflects your spiritual journey. That's why the Vatican Council said we're a pilgrim people. We're going from one place to the next. We're going from earth, God willing, to heaven. So making this little physical pilgrimage is to represent your spiritual journey, hopefully, to heaven.
Yes.
And then, Father, you're going to be doing a pilgrimage to Fatima and Lourdes in November of 2011, where our Blessed Mother appeared in these two beautiful shrines, and a lot of wonderful healings have taken place there.
So we'll have that information on the screen again before the end of the show. You've seen it before. If you want to join Father Ken in May to Italy, or Father Trigilio to go to Lourdes and Fatima, you can contact them on the pilgrimage site. If you have any questions about tonight's topic, call us now at 1-800-221-9460 or 205-271-2980. We'll see you after the break. Well, welcome back. And we concluded the last segment talking about pilgrimages. Father Mitch actually is taking a group to the Holy Land. That's why he's not here. He's traveling there actually today with a group. He usually takes about 100 people. And we'd also like you to come here on pilgrimage. It's a wonderful place to come to make a retreat. There's the two facilities here at EWTN where we do all of the broadcasts and the taping and the programs. But then there's also the shrine in Hansville, and both are within striking distance of one another, about 60 miles apart. It's a wonderful place to make a little pilgrimage, to hear some spiritual talks, and to attend the Masses here. So if you're interested, you can call at 205-271-2966, or just visit our website at www.ewtn.com. Now, before we go on to the questions, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Confraternity for Catholic Clergy that you're the president of, and you're also a board member of?
Right.
Well, the Confraternity of Catholic Clergy was begun some 35 years ago. Father Levis, Father Dudley Day, and a couple of other priests, Father Bradley, a Jesuit. It was sort of like a counterpart to the Fellowship of Catholic Scholars, but more for the average typical parish priest to get involved. It was in the midst of the turmoil of people descending from Monte Vitae. So it was a way of Orthodox clergy getting together and giving fraternal support. And as time progressed, they focused on the need to promote ongoing formation among the clergy, particularly intellectual, theological, and pastoral formation. So what the goal is to have, in a local area like we have a monthly meeting at Mount St. Mary's for priests in the Pennsylvania and Maryland area. We have a very active group in Los Angeles, a monthly meeting where priests get together and pray and study. Mm-hmm. We have an annual conference where we bring in different speakers to talk to us. We were just in Rome in January with the Australian Confraternity, and this coming July of 2011, we're going to have a conference in Mundelein on the sacred liturgy, particularly on the Mass, because the Revised Mass translation will be implemented in the first Sunday of Advent of 2011. So that's July 26th to the 29th. Any priest or deacon in good standing is welcome to join us.
And it's a wonderful opportunity, and the one last year was our first ever international one. So, and it was sponsored by the Australian Confraternity, and we stayed at the Domus Marta, which was right inside the walls of the Vatican, and great opportunities with theologians in Rome to give us talks, and beautiful liturgies that we went to different historic churches in Rome for Mass and Vespers, and then of course the Epiphany Mass with the Holy Father. We had great tickets. We were right there, so we were, and half of our group was able to give out Holy Communion at that as well.
Special, yeah.
So, but this one here is local, which means it's national, which that will be normal in between the international ones. And Chicago's a great medium place to meet for this convention.
And Mundelein, it has a liturgical institute, which is also, we're going to be in their backyard. We're at the Cardinal Strict retreat house, which is piggyback to the Mundelein Seminary.
And basically, it's interesting because, as you know, the new missal will be in effect next Advent of 2011. And so the same publisher, the Dummies series, contacted Father John and myself to write another book for them, Catholic Mass for Dummies. So some of these things will be addressed in our book, which would be the new translation. But also the book will have the extraordinary form, the high, the low, and the sung extraordinary form of the Mass. They'll have the Anglican form of the Roman Rite, since we're receiving Anglican whole churches into the Roman Church, and then the Byzantine form, because that's the left and right lungs of the Church, the Latin and the Eastern Rite. So we'll have the Byzantine form of the liturgy in there, plus the biblical roots of the Mass, and also things that you see at Mass: vestments, the priest, the deacon, the altar servers,
linens, palls,
chalices.
So it'll be a great reference.
Nuts and bolts, yeah.
It's
For anything about the Mass.
For anyone, from a youngster up to an older person.
When will that be? Do you expect
Hopefully it'll be out in March, end of February, beginning of March, but definitely it'll be out in time to prepare people to get ready for the new translation that takes effect in November of next year.
And I forgot to mention to our viewers that our religious catalog carries all of your Dummies books. So I looked at their website today. We have all of those available. If you want to contact Religious Catalog, you can find the books that Father John and Father Ken have been involved in the past few years on these different topics.
And two of them, we had to get another author to help us. So like with John Paul II for Dummies, we had a Father J. Toporowski help us. On this one, on the Mass, we had a Monsignor James Cafone from Seton Hall University help us.
He was my vice rector in the seminary.
Oh, great.
And a great mentor. So he's the third author of that. But we also wrote two other books outside of the Dummy series. We wrote for Catholic Answers, so 300...
Catholicism Answer Book.
Catholicism for Answer Book.
No, Catholicism Answer Book.
Okay, there you go. 300 Questions and Answers in the Catholic Faith. And then we wrote the Essential Bible Book, which used to be called Everything Bible Book, but they changed the title to Essential Bible Book. So it's a great overview of the Bible.
You have been busy.
In between stuff.
We have a caller waiting for us. Hello, where are you from? Hello, are you there? Where are you from?
Hello.
Hello, John.
Yes, this is John from New Jersey. Merry Christmas, Fathers.
Merry Christmas.
My friend and I were wondering, why do we call the archangels Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel saints if they're spirits and not persons?
Let the Jersey guy answer.
If you look at the word saint comes from Latin, sancta. Sancta means holy. So when we refer to the angels, we're referring to them as holy beings. They're creations of God, pure spirits. And so in that sense, being around the throne of God, their primary mission is adoration of God and loving God. So in that sense, they're holy beings. So you you can use the title saints, even though specifically we use that title for human beings who have attained heaven, men and females. But it's very appropriate to use for angels as well. And the three angels you just mentioned, of course, are scriptural reference. Gabriel, who announced to Mary that she would be the mother of God. The second role of angels are messengers, and that was certainly, he was a messenger, and that. And then we had Raphael, the archangel who guided Tobias out of the desert. And you have Michael, the great prayer that we say to St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in the battle. And of course, he's also the great battle that was before the creation of man and woman, the battle of pride, which Lucifer, of course, a bad angel, was very proud, and Michael was very obedient. So you have that as well, references in Scripture.
It's analogous too. I mean, it's like in the Byzantine Church, they'll call a patriarch your beatitude, but it's not to mean that he's like the beatitudes Jesus did on the Sermon on the Mount. So there's an analogous way we use the word saint with the archangels, but with the man is correct. Technically speaking, saints are human beings in heaven. Angels are a separate entity, but we'll call them saint just to keep because our minds are finite, so we have to we have limited language.
Great. Well, we have another caller. Hello, where are you from?
Hello.
Yes, where are you from?
I'm from Middletown, Rhode Island. My name is John, and had a question about the naming of the saints as regards to their domains. You mentioned St. Lucy is the patron saint of eyes, and St. George is the patron saint of England. And we have a couple of new saints like Brother Andre of Montreal, and he worked in the Industrial Revolution in Rhode Island. I think Moosup, Connecticut. Could he be acclaimed patron saint of mill workers? We're very proud in Rhode Island of our mill culture. And then also Cardinal Newman. Could he be the patron saint of college professors?
I see no reason why not. The designation of a patron saint isn't necessarily something that's part of their canonization decree. I think the Church in her wisdom allows that to take shape and take form so that if people start to invoke that particular saint, like the gentleman suggested for for St. Andre, go for it, because it's God's will if these miraculous happenings or cures take place. But I think there's always some kind of connection between the saint, either where they lived or where they worked, and the particular patronage.
And also, he mentioned about countries, too. Many of our saints are patron saints of certain countries, like St. Patrick is a patron saint of Ireland. In the United States, the Immaculate Conception of Mary, so a special title of Mary. Mexico would be Our Lady of Guadalupe. Of course, she's also the patroness of the Americas, Our Lady of Guadalupe as well. Canada would be St. Joseph. And Italy has two, St. Francis of Assisi and St. Catherine of Siena.
The Dominicans are a little...
So many countries are also placed under patronage of saints as well.
Now, one of the most interesting ones I saw in your book was for cranky children. There's a patron for cranky children.
Yes.
Parents,
Mothers, listen up.
Listen up. Yeah, well, St. Sebastian, which was very... esoteric to find out how we got that, and evidently there's a report, a tale in which some two Roman boys were arguing, making a fuss. They were screaming, yelling, crying because the Roman soldiers wanted them to worship the Caesar, and they were crying and making a fuss, and they were about to be killed because they wouldn't stop their crankiness. And St. Sebastian calmed them down and actually converted them to Christianity. So not only did he get them to stop crying, he got them to become good little boys and convert to the faith. So he's invoked as the patron saint for cranky children.
There you go, mothers. We have another caller, Lee. Hello, Lee. Where are you from? Hello, where are you from?
I'm from South Carolina.
And what is your question?
I wanted to know that to become a saint, you have to have a miracle. Does that miracle always have to be a miracle of healing?
Ooh, that's a very good question. It does not have to be a miracle of healing, but typically those are the ones that are the easiest to verify, identify, because if it's some other supernatural occurrence, you're going to have to get other kind of scientists in there. Obviously, like, the miracle of the sun at Fatima, that was a miraculous occurrence, but you're going to have to get in astronomers and all these other experts in there. So the miraculous medical healings are the easiest to examine and look at. So I think that's why they look at those, and I think that's why the Holy Spirit in His wisdom uses those more than anything else.
And they're looking at it's instantaneous.
Exactly.
It has to happen that way. And so, and no medical reason why and that this happens. And that's why they employ doctors and things to look in science.
And there's a personal element, too, because if you're praying for something, a miraculous healing taking place in your body is very personal, whereas you say, I'm praying that the earthquake stops or the drought ends. It's not as a personal identification with that.
Right.
Although you may want to say about the liquefaction of the blood of St. Gennaro.
Oh, that's
in,
right.
In Naples.
San Gennaro, St. Januarius, as he said in English. His blood is powder because it's been dead for so long. But every year on his feast day, September the 19th, it liquefies.
And the people of Naples, he's the patron saint of Naples, pray to the Lord through his intercession for blessings upon their region. Especially because they have Vesuvius not too far away, so they have a vested interest in Januarius.
So there's these little signs, these divine interventions that are showing to us that God is watching out for us, that we have saints who help us in heaven, and these little divine signs and great divine signs reveal that to us, that manifest that to us. So I thought we had another caller. We don't have our caller anymore. Tell us about the relics. This is another important element of devotion to the saints. And what about relics?
Well, here's a man who's got almost the largest collection I've seen, Father Brighenti.
My cousin worked for Congregation of Saints for the Salesian order that he belonged to. And he had gifted me with many relics, first-class relics. So there are three divisions of relics. First-class relics are usually a part of the saint himself or herself, the bone or hair or something of that nature, and placed in a little tech, they call it, and on the back of it is a seal in wax with this official signature, and then a certificate comes with it that it's signed by a cardinal prefect of that congregation and then sealed. So it's a very official document that comes with a first-class relic. You can only get this now through your bishop writing to the chancery in Rome for a specific request for a relic, because there was a problem of trafficking relics on the internet. So the church tried to stop that and doing so. And it can only be used for church reasons. So really, parishes may request a relic if they're patron saint of the parish and things of that nature. The second distinction of relics would be a second-class relic, and a second-class relic would be an object that the saint used or had in his possession, rosary beads, a crucifix, a prayer book, the habit. And Father, you might have an interesting story that Father told you about the habit of Pius X. That was a
Father Lambert told us this story the other day. He's a Dominican priest that's down the road here from you guys, and he said evidently Pius X was revered as a holy man even before his death, and one of the sisters used to keep his old habits when he got a little frayed and he got a new one. And this lady had a sick child and she obtained one of his old habits, and the kid got miraculously cured. So she wanted to go thank the Holy Father. She ran up to Pope Pius X and said, "Oh, Your Holiness, I want to thank you for curing my kid." And he said, "I don't know what you're talking about." "Well, I used one of your old habits." And she said, "It cured him." And he said, "Well," he said, "it worked better for you than for me." He was unaware that these things had a miraculous effect. But for it to be a genuine relic, like Father Ken said, for the second class, it has to be something that the person wore or owned and had contact with the body.
And then finally, the third-class relic would be a piece of cloth that touched the saint's bones or remains, and usually it's a little piece of material, and that's given out. That's the most common one that.
And we find that even in the scriptures, right? That
Yes.
they used the handkerchiefs of St. Paul, and they were healed,
Right.
or the shadow of St. Peter. So it was.
And people today, I mean, they'll go gaga goo goo for Elvis Presley's blue suede shoes or John Lennon's eyeglasses, and they're not too offended by that. So the collection of memorabilia is not something that's offensive to the faith. These are not magical items,
No.
but they endear us to the saint just in the same way you'd want to keep objects of your loved ones. Your dad's golf clubs after he passed away. And you may not like golf, but they're your dad's golf clubs.
Right.
In fact, a pair of rosary beads were given to me by my mother, who were given to her by her mother, and those are and I lose rosary beads all the time. Those are the pair that I never lose.
Right.
So those are very close to me. So it's in a similar vein and fashion.
We have another caller, Kathy. Hello, where are you from?
Omaha, Nebraska.
And what is your question?
In 1961, my mother passed away from cancer, and the priest said at her funeral mass that she was truly a saint. She suffered her cancer without any medication for the conversion and salvation of all her children and grandchildren. And I was wondering, how do we deal with something like that? I don't know whether we should call her a saint or what, I was hoping you could give us a little advice on this. This has been in our family all this time, and nobody's really known how to deal with it.
Well, I think it's a good thing that she brought up, because anyone who's in heaven is a saint, whether you're canonized or not.
Yes.
So whether you have a church named after you or you have a holy card with your face on it is irrelevant. If you're in heaven, you're a saint. And there are millions and millions of saints who we don't know about, but only the good Lord knows. So if her mother lived a heroic, virtuous life, which evidently that priest attested to, there is no question that she can and will be a saint, if she's not already a saint now, in heaven. It's just the canonized saints that we talked about in the book. These are the ones that we have some credible evidence. But I've got 2 brothers and a dad that I hope are, God willing, in heaven, if not now, soon to be, if they're in purgatory. So that's our ultimate goal, is that everybody get there. And as she mentioned, some people's purgatory is on earth. So if you really live an exemplary life or go through heroic virtue, you could be a saint. It's just you don't have to be canonized to be a saint.
And I just had a cousin that died, and she was mentally challenged from the day she was born, severely retarded, and so therefore was totally innocent, no guile. She was baptized and pure innocent soul. So we believe that when she died with no sin on her soul, she went into heaven as well. So there's a feast that we have called All Saints' Day. Mm-hmm. And All Saints' Day covers all the multitude of people that are not officially canonized or on the liturgical calendar or in the litany of saints, but certainly doesn't take away from the fact that they are in heaven. And again, it reminds us that this is our goal, that this is what we are here on earth, to know, love, and serve God in this life and prepare ourselves to be with Him for all eternity. So All Saints' Day helps us to encourage us and remind us on our pilgrimage.
Plus, she can pray to her mother, because if her mother's in purgatory or, God willing, she's in heaven now, she can still intercede for them.
Mm-hmm. Are there any, your book, of course, would be something that's valuable for teaching the faith, for small groups that want to...
Confirmation candidates, try to think of a name you're going to pick for for confirmation.
Because then they can also do the little research there. Plus, in the back, there's some great litanies and prayers and novenas. Also, pilgrim sites we put in there too. So that gives us a nice little overview picture on the saints.
Mm-hmm.
There was that one place we wanted to mention in Pittsburgh, the St. Anthony Shrine, where Father Mollern.
He has more relics than I do.
He's got more than you, yes. He was, I guess, one of the Habsburg, or he was a descendant of the Habsburgs, and had all this money at his disposal. And after World War I, there was so much mayhem, a lot of churches had been trashed. He got on the black market, salvaged all these relics, brought them back to the United States. And outside of Pittsburgh, there's a chapel where there's the largest collection of relics in North America.
Wow. So remember, family, that we are all called to be saints. Don't miss the opportunity. As Mother reminded us, that it is possible. In fact, that is the path for our greatest joy, our greatest fulfillment, not only in the life to come, but even here. We can begin our life of heaven by living the life of a saint, being faithful to the duties of our state in life, striving to do God's will, living a life of prayer, the sacraments, receiving them with devotion. And the Lord will take us by the hand, and He will lead us to that holiness that He's destined for us for all eternity. Please remember that EWTN is brought to you by you. And if you'd please keep us between your gas and electric and cable bill throughout the holidays. This is a time when we remember the greatest gift that God gave us and the gift of His Son. And we appreciate your own gifts for us to help this network continue to go. If this network has been a blessing to you, we appreciate your assistance to keep it continuing. And you can always visit our website, www.ewtn.com. And we'll now close with a blessing from our three priests here. May the Lord bless you and help you all to become the saints that you are destined to be. The Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit bless you and keep you all the days of your life. God bless you.